are you live there?
I am. There's one participant. Is that you?
Okay. Give me 1 second to find. Yeah. Okay. Part 3. I'm gonna copy this. I'll paste it in here. Okay, so copy this. Paste. I believe people are starting to transfer over.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us today for part 3 of our series, our leadership series on the subject of leading through uncertain times. I'm just excited to be able to teach this session once again. We still have people that are crossing over from the earlier link to this particular one. And once again, I want to thank you for your patience and for willingness to endure. I'd like to maybe just give it a few more minutes to ensure that we've got everybody on that was planning to join today. I trust you had a good weekend and of ministry, and I hope things are quieting down in your area with regards to the virus, COVID-19, and that you are starting to pick up and get back into some form of ministry. I know some churches have already gone back in other parts of the world. They've got smaller numbers and more services in order to be able to cater. And I'm sure you're working through similar alternatives with regards to how you're looking to manage and take your ministry forward. We're still waiting for a few more people to join. And in the meantime, what I'd like to do is just go back and review some things that we've looked at over the last couple of weeks. And we've talked about how it is important as we go through times of uncertainty, that this is a great opportunity for us as leaders to stand out and be able to lead from the front. And we've looked at some priorities that are critical. We've looked at a mindset that's critical. We've looked at some things that we need to be doing to support our people that are extremely critical during such times. Today, as we get started, I want to zone in on the subject of having the right mindset and how that is so important. Not only when we are entering into some uncertain times, not only when we are in the middle of uncertain times, but as all of you are looking to come through this time and thinking through what exactly should I be doing in order to prepare as we get out of this time. For a moment, I'm not saying that the uncertainties and the problems are all behind that. Yes, we've got some significant trouble that is still that everyone faces, whether it be in the form of dealing with COVID-19 or whether it's in the form of dealing with the economic challenges that come out of that, and all of the uncertainties and the difficulties that this has brought about with social distancing, etc. But as we kick off this particular session and look at part 3 of our training, I want to talk to you for a moment on perspectives. In fact, we will be spending a significant portion of our study today looking at both priorities uh, and perspectives that we must have as leaders as we go through or as we prepare to bring people out of such times. As I mentioned last week, an important perspective to keep in mind is that how we view things will determine how we do things. What I mean by that is, and I talk about how we view things, I wanted to just dive into that a little deeper today. We all have our lives impacted and our thinking impacted by things that happen around us. It could be based on our learning, it could be based on our past experiences, it could be based on news that we see all around us and we're reading about, it could be based on environment and things that are taking place in our environment around, it could be based on circumstances, it could even be based on belief. Now, all of these things are lenses that impact how we view things. And why I am talking about that is that how we view things then will determine how we do things. So, if your circumstances and your background is such that you are somebody who's very careful and risk averse, then how you do things would be evidenced by that. But I want you to today think about possibilities. I want you to think about all of the options that could be open to you. Quite interesting. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's in a particular city, and thus far the ministry has somewhat been confined to that city because of logistics. But one of the thoughts that they were sharing with me was that whilst keeping the focus of the ministry in that city, they are looking at how they could be using online and live stream, not to be able to live stream their own services that are being held within that particular location or within a building, but how they're looking to use live stream to create an alternate channel through which they could be reaching people that are in other cities. And that could be in the form of sharing the gospel, whether that be in the form of conducting discipleship. But this is exactly what I mean. As we plan to come out of this crisis, we all have the opportunity to think about what we could be doing different in order to be able to support the purpose for which God's called you and placed you in the place that He has. Having said that, a crisis helps us to re-examine our perspective. And that's what this uncertain time is all about. I shared with you that quote by Albert Einstein, which said, "In the middle of difficulties lies opportunity." And this is a great opportunity for us to think about all of what's possible. I'm not saying you're going to do all of that, but at least you have the opportunity to think through all of that. As someone said, in every adversity lies the seed of an equal or greater opportunity. That's a really good statement, that in every adversity lies the seed of an equal or greater opportunity. In fact, the gentleman who said that was Napoleon Hill in one of the books that he wrote. And that is so true. Because the reality is that we all have bad experiences. Yes, COVID-19 has been one, but I'm sure in your life, as you think through, you've had many bad experiences. So the reality is that everyone has them. Not only do we all have bad experiences that confront us from time to time, and we all go through times of trial, none of us like it. That's the second truth. But very few make bad experiences into positive experiences. And as the child of God, we all know, and we've shared this with others, that God desires to use our trials. And God desires to use such times in our life to make us stronger, to refine us, and to make us more into the image of his son. We're studying 1 Samuel chapter 30, and you all know that portion of scripture with regards to what David went through and what happened in Ziklag. And even as we talked about in our session last week, here is another example, a classic example of how an individual and a people were confronted by trial after trial. And as the Bible describes in that portion of scripture, they were just overwhelmed by what confronted them. They had lost everything. They had lost even their families. And it's a great opportunity for us to sit and reflect as to how we should deal with circumstances like that, not only in our lives as individuals, but also as leaders. And we see how David was able to shut down for a moment the overwhelming noise of people, that his own people that wanted to stone him and kill him, and just all of the pain and the agony that he went through, and how he goes and he seeks the mind of God, and he was able to hear the voice of God and what God wanted him to do above all of the noise. And I want you to think about that today as you think about your ministries. You think about your own life and your circumstances right now and what you are going through. That God's desire is that we will be able to elevate his voice and his word above all of the other background noise, and then be able to follow that course. But we see in this portion that David not only followed that course, he had to take this group of men with him. And what a tremendous story that is, that even as he followed, David was observant to some things in our life that we could miss easily. That story talks about how there was that Egyptian young man who was sick. And while David was pursuing the mission that he was on, it would have been very easy for him to see that individual as an interruption in what he was trying to accomplish. And if he had missed that, he would have missed what God was actually laying on his pathway as a young man that could lead him to where he wanted to get to and be able to recover all that he had to get to. And there's a tremendous principle in there that when you are going through uncertain times and you are pressing forward with an agenda that you and I have, that we are not only mindful to elevate the voice and the word of God above all of the other noises, but we are also observant to the little things that God places in our way that at times may seem like a distraction. It may seem an interruption, but it is something that God can use to accomplish that which he wants to in our lives. So I want you to think about that story and maybe go back and look at that from 1 Samuel chapter 30 and see what life lessons you can learn. There are many other principles you can learn from that portion of scripture, and don't miss that out. But in that portion also is one other principle that I want to draw out. As a leader, even though you're going through all of the battles that you may be encountering, you and I can never forget that we are a leader of people. And as we lead, we must lead fairly with people that are in tow with what we want to do, but also people that may be lagging behind and are weary. And we want to be a leader who's fair during such times. So in order to do that, as we spoke and touched on last week, it's vital that we balance the striving, and all of us are striving to come out of this, and we're eager to get back, and we're eager to do things. And we've all got, everybody you speak to at this time has the same phrase: we're busier now than we've ever been. But I want to caution you that in your striving, that we've got to be careful of how we are leading, because you've got to be mindful that people that you're leading are going through uncertainties that they haven't been through. And what they need at this time is somebody that can come alongside and can actually help them and walk with them and lead, not from the front. Yes, we must lead from the front for sure. But to them, they're also seeing you as someone that's leading from the side. And that's an important principle of leadership that we've got to keep in mind during such times. And what differentiates successful versus unsuccessful leaders at this time is the thinking, and it's our thinking that would shape that. It's our thinking about how we move forward from here. It's our thinking about how we care for those people that are looking to us for leadership. And so, as we think about perspective and as we examine our perspective, I want you to examine your perspective with regards to how you're leading from the front, but how you're also leading from the side. Napoleon Hill also made another interesting statement. He said, the only limitation is what one that is set up in our own mind. So as you're thinking about possibilities, as you're thinking about all of the options that are open to you, keep in mind that statement, that often the only limitation is what we set in our own mind. So that said, I want to move on and talk to you also about how a crisis presents us with a seed of opportunity. I don't know if you've had time to think and reflect as you're coming out of this time on what the past 10 weeks has been for you. And if you have taken the time and the opportunity to examine how something as bad as this can be turned around, and out of this can come good. But here's the key thing to remember. For anything good to come out of this, it's not going to happen accidentally, but it is only going to happen because we have been intentional about it. So the questions I have for you is, what's changed in your personal time with the Lord? What's changed in your personal time in general? Have you been using this time to study more, to learn more, to grow more, to take care of yourself physically? How has this time that you've had changed things as far as your family is concerned? Has it given you more quality time? How has this changed in the way you meet and spend time with people? How has it changed in how you are value adding to people that are depending on you, whether it be in your church or in your group or in the country that you're serving in? But here's the last question in that. How has it changed your thinking time? And so the three questions I have for you with regards to that are, how will this crisis make me better today? How has it made you better today? The second question is, how can I help others that are going to be coming out of this crisis? My wife and I met with a couple that we are mentoring, and they're part of our small group leaders. This is the first time they had gotten out of their home and met with somebody. And it was tremendous time to kind of understand how they've been dealing with it. And I'm sure you're going to have such times. But how are you thinking about those times? And what actions will you take to improve your circumstances? I wanted to read a quote out to you, and if you have the ability to take it down, otherwise I'll put this in the chat later on. Here's what it says. We are all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as unsolvable problems or impossible situations. I'm going to read that to you again. It says, we are all faced with a series of great opportunities that are brilliantly disguised as either unsolvable problems or impossible situations. Think about that. And that's what I mean by perspective. Most often, we see an unsolvable problem. We see an impossible situation. But those are great opportunities that are brilliantly disguised to look like that. So, last week in your notes, we had some priorities that I wanted you to keep in mind. And I'm going to just walk through them very quickly because I want to get down to talking about some perspectives. As a leader, and as you start to come out and meet with people, remember that the day you became a missionary, a pastor, and you became a leader, you gave up the right to focus on yourself. And so as you come out, you will be confronted by people that you're leading, and they want you to love them. They want you to lift them. They want to learn from you and make it your goal to put your people first always. The second priority is it's important that you continually educate yourself, not just about the crisis and not just about the economy, but you are equipping yourself with the truth of God's word so that God can use that and the investment that you have made in studying to be able to lift the others up. That's the second. Third, it's important that as a leader you be flexible, because people have gone through some things that never been through before. And we've got to give them an opportunity to come on the journey with us. And that means we've got to be adaptable. And we looked at that word last week, and what that means is that we've got to adjust. We've got to adjust our thinking. We've got to adjust the way we interact, the way we relate. And all of that is critical in bringing people on the journey. Fourth, leverage your people. You can have a vision, a mission that is set, but we can have different perspectives. And people have different perspectives. And as a leader, it's important that we arm ourselves with all of those perspectives so that we can make a good decision that's based on all of the information. There was an American president and a company CEO who had a slogan on their desk. And the slogan said, but on the other hand. But on the other hand, and that's a great statement for us to think about and look at all of the opportunities, explore the pros and cons, have people actually share with you what they think are opportunities so that you can make a well-informed decision based on all of that. I'm not talking about shared leadership, but I'm talking about listening to people around you and using that to get bigger. All of us is smarter than the one of us. Ken Blanchard said that, and how true that statement is. All of us is smarter than the one of us. Fifth, communicate judiciously. I said a few weeks ago, it's important that we communicate consistently. But I want to emphasize that because it's important that you communicate and more than you need to, as if you think, because it's important that you stay connected. Sixth, be authentic. Be authentic, meaning in certain times we don't have the answers, and that's okay. And as I said last week, being someone else means one of you is not real. Being someone else means that one of you is not real. And so be yourself. It's important that you be right and are seen to be right rather than always be seen to doing right. We're not going to get to do what's right all of the time. If we are, we're not pushing ourselves. But it's important that we be the real you. 7, manage yourself. The biggest challenge, the hardest person for me to lead is myself. When I stand in front of the mirror, the one that stands in the way to my own growth is my own self. And I'm sure it's no different with you. So I want to encourage, invest in your own growth, because as you grow in the knowledge of God's word, as you grow as a pastor, as a missionary, as a leader, then you're providing opportunity for others with you to be growing. 8, be with the crowd. And I say that quite carefully, and I want to make sure that you understand me clearly. As a leader, you want to be someone that is with the people, and I'm sure you do that. But it's also important that whilst you're with the people, that you're keeping your head above the ground so that you can see the big picture and you can see where you're taking them through. Because if you remember, we spoke about as a leader is someone who sees more and also sees before. So as you are with the crowd, as you're moving with them, and as you're connecting with them, as vital and as important as that is, it's equally important that you keep your head above so that you're able to see a little further and you're able to see those things a little before. So you're seeing the opportunity. And so as we finish this segment, I want you to think about perspectives and priorities. Allow your perspectives to fall into the realm of possibilities and think about possibilities, and don't let the problems and the difficulties that you're encountering hold you back from seeing the opportunities. You know, as you're leading people at times like this, everybody wants to be led. But those that you're leading, I believe, have 3 questions of us as leaders. Write this down because this is extremely important. They have 3 questions. The first question they will ask you is, will you help me? Will you help me? And that is a question that is about care. And they're asking you, do you care enough for me to help me? The second question they would ask you is, can you help me? And that question is a confidence question. And so what they're asking you is, look, do you have the ability to help me based on your knowledge and your experience? And they want to know that you're somebody that can really help them. So the first is a care question. This is a confidence question when they ask you, can you help me? But the third is a question that we should not forget. And the third question they ask is, can I trust you? Can I trust you? And that is a character question. They want to know that they can trust you. So people, even as this is a great time to lead and people want to be led, everywhere they're asking the same three questions. Will you help me? Can you help me? Can I trust you? In other words, do you care? Do I have the confidence that you can? And do you have the character whereby I can trust you? So think of those three questions, because the answer to that will ensure that you are in the right space, but you're also, as you're dealing with people, you're telling them proactively, I want to invest in you because I care. I want to invest in you because I've been down this pathway before and I'm confident I can help you, not in my own ability alone, but because of my Heavenly Father. But third, you can trust me because I will demonstrate that I have the right character. So I want to now get down to deep diving a little further in this session in the time that we have about perspective. And I want to give you some perspectives that are good for you to keep in mind. First of all, if you think about the cycle of growth, the cycle of growth is made up of first testing some things. And as you're coming through this time of uncertainty into getting back into what everybody describes as a new norm, you're going to test some things, and that's good. And it's important to test some things. And as you test some things, you're going to find that some things are going to fail. They're not going to work out. And there's nothing wrong in that. That's good. Because the third spoke in that cycle is that not only are you testing, you're failing in some things, you're learning from those things, and then you're improving those things, and then you're re-entering into that space. So if, for example, you say, look, I'd like to be able to do some things online, to be able to take the gospel and spread this across some other villages and to other language groups, you may test it. Of the things that you try, some things may fail, and that's fine. You want to examine why they failed and you want to learn from that. And once you learn, you're going to improve some things, and rather than stop, you're going to re-enter and you're going to try that again. And that's what I mean by the cycle. Now, if we are committed to that as leaders in terms of our own planning and the things that we put into place, but in terms of our own growth, the first perspective that I want us to reflect on today is that everything worthwhile is uphill. I've never come across in the years that I have been involved in, whether it be in family, in my own personal life, in career, in ministry, where there were some really good things to do, but they were so easy to do and it was like going downhill on a cycle. That's never the case. Everything worthwhile is uphill, whether that be with regards to the fulfillment of some of your dreams, whether that be with relationships, whether that be with ministry. It is never accidental. It is always intentional. And therefore, everything worthwhile is uphill. The challenge is that we don't look, the challenge is that we all want those things that are on top of that hill. But while we have uphill expectations, most often in our life, we have downhill habits. Uphill expectations, but downhill habits. And it is important that we examine what is it that we would need to change and how is it that we need to be self-disciplined. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago, so that we can start changing those downhill habits one at a time. So don't wish things were easier, but that they were better. And so we've got to get away from complacency. We have to get away from comfort. We've got to get away from things that would hold us down and help people that have the wrong perspective. You, as a leader, are going to be coming up with working with people that are exactly that. They have uphill expectations, downhill habits, and you're going to have to help them. The question is, how do you help them? And so it's important that we understand that that change will take time. But a pathway to that change is that we've got to become good listeners as leaders. We've got to have a sense of empathy. We've got to have a sense of focus on what you can control. It's important that we learn to ask good questions and the right questions. And it's important that we don't come across as people who are instructing, but we come across like a coach. Now, I'm sure many of you have played sports or you watch sports. Right? And as you think about a coach does not have one style as he works with all of the players in the team, because he realizes that all of them are different. They all have great potential, but they have downhill habits. But what he does to work with them, to bring them through and make them the best that they can be, not just as individuals, but as a team, is that he's got to work with them individually. And so he's got to think about what approach, what style, how he works with one player versus the other. That's the same with us. But most often in our life as leaders, we have one style that we try and use with everybody. And that doesn't work. We've got another series that I teach on situational leadership, which is exactly that, because when you give somebody a task, there is an element of skill that's required, but there is also the element of will, W-I-L-L. And it's important that as a leader, you are able to clearly assess what is it that they need help with, whether it's on the skill side or the will side, and it's the combination of that. And depending on where they are, you've got to then apply the right style. So as we think about everything worthwhile is uphill, the question that I have is, how do you stay on top of your game? If you, again, I keep going back to sports. Somebody asked me that question, and I thought about that for a minute, having been, playing a lot of sports myself in my early days. Because the one thing we know about a game is that the game never stays the same. And if we are to stay on top of our game, then in that sense, we've got to get better all the time. And in the area of leadership, and I'm speaking about leadership, in the area of leadership, we've got to grow and grow and grow so that we can help our people as circumstances change in their lives, as time frames change in their life, and as the ministry changes. So that's the first perspective. Everything worthwhile is uphill. The second is there is always an answer. I can never, ever, overstate that. I keep telling people that I lead today across the businesses the same thing. The moment you think something can't be done, you will stop thinking about a solution, because we've already framed in our mind this cannot be done. But if you were to tell yourself, look, there is always an answer, I've got to find it, then we will not stop exploring what's possible. I love the statement. Somebody said, I live on the other side of yes. Whatever you want from me. What a mindset to have. Imagine if your people in your church had that kind of a mindset, that before you could even you call out their name and say, look, I need some help with something. And if their response was, I live on the other side of yes, whatever you want from me. Where do you think that comes from? That comes from the attitude that we're required to have. And so if you were to be a person that always looked at a situation, no matter how tough it was, and told yourself there is always an answer, those people are people that have a good attitude towards things. As the old saying goes, two men looked out of a prison cell. One saw mud because he was looking down, but the other saw stars. And so it's all a matter of perspective. And so it's important that we believe that there's always an answer. As you think, I mentioned earlier, there's the gap between successful and unsuccessful leaders is our thinking. That's so true. But I want to add one more element. Our thinking is important, but in addition to our thinking, there must also be the reflection. There must also be the reflection. And if there's nothing else that you take away from this session today, this is one that I want you to take away. Your thinking and your reflection, both of those go hand in hand to ensuring that that circle that you're focused on testing, failing, examining, relearning, re-entering. That's the process that we've got to keep in mind with everything that we are attempting. And in that process, we must believe there is always an answer. This will determine whether you're a victim or a victor. This is a learned behavior. But as you are examining answers, again, I want you expand you to think about the people that you have around you. Use every opportunity. Call some people that you go to for mentoring. Talk to people that you have around you. Seek counsel from other people, because there is value in collaboration and there is value in counsel. So involve others. All of us is better than what did I say? One of us. And then the other element is that it's important that we challenge the paradigm. So don't stereotype, but challenge the status quo and make sure that you're asking the right question. So that's the second perspective. So first, everything worthwhile is uphill. Second, there is always an answer. It's important that we learn, we unlearn, and we relearn, right? If we don't unlearn, we will never relearn. And so that is why it's important that we reflect on the things that we're putting into place. The third, allow adversity to help you discover who you really are. Allow adversity to discover who you really are and who you want to be. Some of us need to be moved because we are so set in our ways. And as the saying goes, you get into the groove, you get into the grave. And none of us want to be there. So it's important that some of us are moved. But when we are, we will find out that we are in a greater place, and that this is the place that we really should have been. I want to give you an example. When I started off in my career at American Express, I was country manager. I was so focused on success, wanting to climb the career path, the career ladder, and be successful. But then on 31st of January 1996, somebody decided to drive a truck loaded with 450 pounds of explosive into the building across the road. and it blew the whole street off, and I was almost left for dead. But providentially, I'm thankful to God that He spared my life, and over a 2 year process of treatment and recovery, God just allowed me to get back on my feet again. God used that crisis in my life to move me, because what resulted through that crisis was I gave up my ambitions to be successful, but instead I wanted my life to be one that was significant. And the difference between the two is that success is about me, but significance is about other people. Your role and mine as a leader is to be people that lift other people up so that they can reach the top of their dreams, that they can be the best that they can be. And our role must be to help them accomplish that. But another example was also in 2015, soon after we had the first spiritual leadership conference. It had been a significant period and a phase of time, both here and some things in the stateside. And at the end of that period, I had a heart attack in the city. And with that condition, again, I just drove thinking that I was going to get to my GP, but halfway through, I just actually just went into a hospital. And again, the Lord providentially spared my life because I heard about others during that time, including my own boss, who was on a private plane coming back after a meeting from Japan to the States. Same symptoms that I had, same thing that I experienced. But he was in a place where he could not get through and get the medical assistance he wanted to. And God is in control of all of our lives and our destiny. But when He takes us through times like that, times of uncertainty, times of crisis, He wants to make us bigger and better and more like Him. And that time in 2015 was a great opportunity as I laid in hospital and I had to stop work for a few months, was again to examine my purpose in life. And I realized that my purpose in life needs to be far greater than what I was focused on. And that there's nothing wrong in having ambitious dreams. As I think about Spiritual Leadership Asia, and as I think about the 1040 region with 5.3 billion people, I ask myself, what is it that I can do to make a difference? But that's not a question for me to answer. That's a question for God to answer. What He needs from you is that you will have big dreams for the cities and the countries that He's placed you in, and even beyond those borders. So never be afraid to dream big and ask God to accomplish the impossible in and through your life, so that you can look back and say, that was not me, that was God. And that's where you need to be as a leader. And if you are to be that kind of a leader, that's going to be uphill, because it's going to demand some things of us in terms of our own personal walk with the Lord. It's going to demand some things in terms of our schedules, because it's going to demand that we wake up in the early hours of the morning to commune with Him. It's going to demand that we kind of extend ourselves to our people. But it is worth it, and you will find it worthwhile. So allow adversity to discover who you are and where you should be. And don't be eager to rush back before you've taken the time to think through this. How can this crisis make me better? What actions will I take? How can I help others get better during this time? What actions will I take? How can it make me and the ministry better? What actions will I take? Belief should change as you learn and grow. In other words, as you grow deeper in your walk with the Lord, you will no doubt learn to trust Him to do some things in your life that you consider impossible right now. Fourth, develop a positive life stance. Not going to spend too much time because I've already covered this. And what I wanted to have you think about here is our attitude. Life is filled with good and bad. We've talked about that. Some good and some bad is going to be outside of your control. Some of that good and some of that bad is going to find you, and you're going to be in the middle of that crisis. You're going to be in the middle of uncertain times. With the right attitude, you could ensure that you come out better. A right attitude towards God, a right attitude towards what He is doing in your life, and a right attitude towards the circumstance. So, you don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. That's out of your control. In fact, it's important that we learn to differentiate between a problem and a fact of life. We've got to learn to differentiate between the two. There is nothing that we can do about a fact of life. There may be some things that you can and can't do about a problem. But as you think about developing a positive life stance, what I mean are exactly those two things I want you to keep in mind and write it down and keep it in front of you all the time. Choose your attitude. And the choice you make will determine whether you are a victor or a victim. Second, control what you can control. Don't spend time worrying about the things that are outside of your control. But as I always tell people, and even my children, control the controllables. You can only control the things that are within your control. Spend time focusing on those things. I want to share with you a story from the life of Nelson Mandela. Here was an individual that was physically in that prison for such a long period of time in Robben Island. And I was talking to someone that went into that prison, stood in that cell, and reflected on what it must have been like not to be in that cell for a moment, but to spend the years that he did. But in that book, there's a statement which said, they could not imprison greatness, nor his dreams, nor his thinking. Yes, physically he was behind bars, but those bars didn't imprison the person he was, or his dreams, and the aspirations that he had, and the thinking that he had. And there were some principles that were called out that I've made a note of that I want to kind of share with you today. And those principles can be true in your life and in my life. Our surroundings, this is the first, our surroundings don't have to control our spirit, our attitude. Our surroundings don't have to control our spirit and our attitude. The second principle, people who devalue us don't take away our value. You may come into contact in the place that you're serving where you may feel devalued because they don't pay attention to you. They treat you as a second-class individual because you're not a citizen. But they can't take away your value, because your value is the value that God's placed on you. And you know all of what you've studied from the truth of His word as to how much He values you today. So I don't know what you're going through today. As a leader, as a pastor, as a missionary, you may feel you're forgotten in a far and distant land because nobody's written to you, nobody's told you that they're praying for you, and you feel you're in the front lines of battle and you're in the trenches of battle. And you may feel forgotten and not valued. But it's a good principle to keep in mind that even though people may treat you or devalue you, that doesn't change your value. In his case, in Nelson Mandela's case, they took his name away. They gave him a number, but that did not change who he was. So as a leader, keep in mind that you are someone that God values, and He's placed you where He has for the purpose that He wants to fulfill in and through your life. Third principle from that life of that individual: dreams can be birthed in the daily grind of a prison or in the lime pits. In fact, it's said in that book that Nelson Mandela and 3 or 4 others that were involved in that transformation used to go far away into the lime pits because the soldiers never came there. And so it doesn't matter whether you're in the middle of a lime pit or whether you're in a prison. Dreams can be birthed in the daily grind of those places. Fourth, out of our brokenness, we can be made whole again. Out of our brokenness, we can be made whole again. I want you to keep that in mind, and I want you to think about that as you're ministering to people, because there are going to be lots of broken people that you're going to be able to reach, you're going to be able to touch, and you're going to be able to introduce them to someone that can make them whole. Point number 5, focus on feeding your faith and not your fears. The key word there, very quickly, in the interest of time, is focus. What you focus on will expand. And if you're focused on your fears will expand and they will seem insurmountable. But if you focus on your faith and on who that faith is founded upon, then those overwhelming fears won't be overwhelming. They will actually fall into the right place. Next, I want to quickly cover off. I just put this in here. I'm not going to spend too much of time. Motion impacts emotions. What I want to call out here is that when you're going to come out of this time, you're going to find people that are quite negative. They will think that this is doomsday, and we've got to be careful as to how we can help them. I love the portion in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, when Paul said, think of these things. And those are some good things to think about. And you think about the principle I was thinking about, why did Paul write that? Maybe he was writing to some people that were negative. Whatsoever things that are good, maybe he was thinking about people that who saw the worst in every situation. Because when we focus on as we just spoke about, on things that are not good, then that's what's going to enlarge. But if you focus on those things that are good and of a good report, very quickly we get out of that negative framework into a positive zone. And that's a good counter. And the quicker that we are to recover, the quicker we are able to do that, the quicker we will recover. So you want to, if somebody is in that place of doom and gloom, you're going to talk to them about how they were in that place before and how they came out of that place, not once, but they've come out of things like that time and time again. What you're doing is getting them out of the focus of the bad into thinking about how they can overcome with God's help. Seventh, today matters. Never forget that. Adversity brings uncertainty, and all that you have in your hand is today. Today is what you have. Just for today, I will. And I'm going to leave that sentence blank with you. I want you to write that statement down. Just for today, I will. And I want you to write that sentence and complete that sentence a few times. Just for today, I will do something with my relationships. Just for today, I'm going to do some things with regards to my children. Just for today, I'm going to do some things with regards to my own personal time with the Lord. Just for today, I'm going to do some things with regards to sharing the gospel. Just for today, I'm going to spend some time listening to somebody. And you complete that list. And what I want to tell you is one day you will see the compounded benefit of every day lived well with that mindset. It will take purpose, it will take discipline, but I can assure you that at the end of that, you will see the compounded benefit. Just for today, some things that you're going to do. And then, number 8, reflect instead of reacting to adversity. Reflect instead of reacting to adversity. And I want to give you some questions that are good questions for you to ask yourself at the end of each day as a leader. Here are the questions. How did I lead today? What did I learn today? And the third question, what I should have done today that I didn't do? Because if you take time to think about those 3 questions and you answer that question on how you led today, you're going to get better tomorrow. If you ask yourself what you learned today, you're going to be focused on learning tomorrow. And if you ask yourself, what is it that I should have done today that I did not do today? The answer to that will ensure that you're going to stay focused on that tomorrow. The old rule is that when it's over, we used to tell ourselves it's over. That's the old rule. But the new rule in our lives should be, when it's over, it's not over till I have learned from it. When it's over, it's not over till I have learned from it. And that is what reflection is. That's what I want you to think about. Become a person that is a reflector, a person who reflects rather than a person who reacts. And finally, I want to just quickly, in the interest of time, call out maybe a couple more, and then we'll stop there. I've already taken more than my share of time. Adversity makes you more reliable or relatable to others. Adversity not only makes you reliable, that's the trust issue which we spoke about, but it makes you relatable to others. As a leader, it's important that we build bridges and we see success and failure goes together. And what I mean by that is you're going to try some things. You're going to fail in some of those things. Don't let that hold you back, because you are going to be learning through those times. Because what people want to see is not a leader who's got it all worked out, who's never making mistakes. People relate to a leader who actually has some failures in his own life. And I was talking to somebody who said, I'd love to write a book on flips, flops, and failures and fumbles. And I'm sure we've all got them. And it's good for us to be able to talk about some of those with our people. because they will then see that we are people that they can relate to. Always, number 10, always look for the big picture. We've already covered that small picture means it's only you in the frame, right? I don't know whether you're like me, because somebody shows me a photograph they've taken of a group that I'm there. The first person I look to, first thing I look for is to see, how do I look in that picture? And if I look good, then it's a good picture. If I don't look good, then it's not a good picture. Now, before you laugh at me, I'm sure you do the same thing, right? That's how we all see ourselves, because we see ourselves in the frame. But it's important that our picture includes other people. And it's important that we take those people and on a journey, but it's also important we take what they have to say as things that we can learn from and grow from. If I only focus on me, I miss the billions. Write that down. If you only focus on yourself, you'll miss the thousands in your village, the tens of thousands in your cities, the millions in your country, and the billions in the 1040 focus nations. So it's important that our world doesn't revolve around us. And it's important that our focus is not limited to us. Because if I focus on me, I will miss the billions. Adversity can make you stronger as a person and as a leader. And I want you to keep that in mind as you think about the journey that is ahead. And so, as I finish up today, I want to encourage you to remember that as a leader, God's given you a place of influence. Don't care about who gets the credit, but make sure that you're focused on involving others and focusing on a world of possibilities. You know, I tell myself, when God saved me, He didn't get me, He didn't make me smart immediately. In fact, I still think that I make some stupid mistakes. And I'm sure one day when we get to heaven, we're going to find a lot of those stupid Christians who had the opportunity to learn but didn't learn. I've made some stupid mistakes. I still make some stupid mistakes. But it's important that we learn from those mistakes. And I'm sharing that with you because never underestimate the importance of reflecting, relearning, re-entering, and never give up. In other words, don't be a quitter. And in order to do that, it's important that we have a leadership mindset. It's important that we have the right attitude. It's important that we dream big and we've got big visions. And then it's important that we build relationships that connect us to people, build relationships that where we truly love the people that we're leading, and the people and those people become part of your group and your circle of influence. First, for you to invest in them, but then to use them as a nucleus through which you could grow. So there's going to be a world around you that's looking to you as a leader. Let's make sure that we have the right priorities and the right perspectives so that we can not only grow during this time, but we can help others pursue their dreams, pursue what's on the top of the hills that they are looking to climb, and then help them change their behavior, help them change their habits so that they can actually not only have uphill expectations, but they can get there. And they've been able to get there with your help. So I want to thank you for today. I want to thank you for the time that we've had together. Once again, I apologize for the delayed start. I apologize also for going 10 minutes over. But if you have questions, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love for you to maybe share this with someone else and talk to someone else, or you could teach this material to someone else and help others, whether they be people around you or people that you can mentor and influence. Thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to the session next week. And in the meantime, you have a good week, and may God bless you and help you in your journey and what the Lord has for you this week. Thank you again for being here, for listening intently, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Don't take some time to share your comments and anything else that you would like from me. If I can be of help in any way, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.